You've been alone longer than you admit. Maybe not physically. You've got coworkers, cousins, childhood friends you text twice a year. Maybe you lift with someone. Maybe you game with someone. Maybe you even go out with a group now and then and laugh loud enough to forget for a moment that your guard is always up. But emotionally, existentially, you've been walking this road by yourself. And somewhere along the line, you convinced yourself that's what strength looks like. That stoicism means solitude. That isolation is manhood's tax. But that's not what Marcus Aurelius meant. They quote him like he was some icy-eyed emperor preaching emotional detachment. But read closer, really read. He writes of duty, of sacrifice, of the burden of leadership. But he also writes of men, fellow men, the shared human soul, the thread that ties us. He writes as a father, a soldier, a brother in arms, not as a lone wolf, but as part of a legion. And what we forget, what this modern world has almost surgically removed, is that Roman strength didn't come from individual brilliance. It came from the phalanx, shoulder to shoulder, shield to shield, brotherhood, not bravado. But now, you're taught to compete, to distrust, to guard your ambition like a secret. Every man a rival, every compliment a manipulation, every vulnerable moment a risk. So you get good at being alone. You get good at pretending you don't need anyone. You build walls disguised as independence, and you call it growth. Well, when things get heavy, and they do, you don't have a single man you can call at 3 a.m., not one who really knows the weight you're carrying, not one who would carry some of it with you. And here is the brutal irony. You think this self-isolation is maturity, but often it's just untreated fear, the fear of betrayal, of weakness, of being seen. Because if you reach for another man and he doesn't reach back, what does that say about you? About your worth? It's safer not to reach. So we doubt. And the art of brotherhood, real brotherhood, gets buried under sarcasm, memes, half-truths, and locker room banter. We laugh, but we don't talk. We train, but we don't share. We bleed, but we do it silently. Marcus knew better. In the Meditations, he reflects on his gratitude to those who shaped him, mentors who taught him restraint, friends who challenged his vanity, fellow men who modeled dignity in suffering. He names them. That alone should tell you something. In a world of power and pride, he honored other men, not because it made him look noble, but because he needed them. And so do you. Not to complete you, not to rescue you, but to reflect you, honestly, to call out the man in you when the boy starts speaking, to hold you to your word when everything in you wants to run, to witness your victories without envy and your failures without judgment. But the modern man has been trained to avoid that kind of intimacy. We mistake brotherhood for weakness, as if being known makes us soft. So we overcompensate. We chase achievements instead of friendships, accolades instead of alliance. We numb the ache with women, work, or dopamine drips. But every time you face a dark season alone, every time you bury your shame deeper instead of speaking it to a man who's walked through it too, you dig the grave of brotherhood a little deeper. And then we wonder why we break. We break not just because life is hard, but because we have no one to break with. We weren't designed to suffer in silence. We weren't built for the isolated grind. Even the Stoics, yes, the Stoics gathered, consulted, debated. They leaned on each other like soldiers in the frost. Marcus writes, if you want to be happy, make others happy. He's not talking about people-pleasing. He's talking about meaning. And meaning is born when men walk side by side through fire. But here's the hard truth. Brotherhood is not something you find. It's something you build. It's not accidental. It's forged like anything worthy. And the first real step, is admitting you need it. Not because you're broken, but because you're human. Because you weren't meant to navigate this battlefield alone. And maybe, just maybe, the very thing you've been calling strength all this time is what's keeping you from becoming truly strong.
here's the catch. Men don't build brotherhood the way they build anything else. You can't force it. You can't fake it. You can't put it on a checklist like leg day or financial goals. Brotherhood requires something almost foreign in a world obsessed with projection. Surrender. Not weakness, not submission, but the quiet, terrifying willingness to be seen. And that's where most men stall. Because to be seen is to risk rejection. It's to open the door to a kind of pain you can't outlift, outwork, or outperform. So we play roles. We wear the armor. We become performers of masculinity instead of partakers in it. Stoicism gets twisted into silence. Toughness becomes detachment. And pride parades around as self-reliance. But underneath all of it, something in you is starving. Starving for someone who doesn't need you to explain. Someone who hears the silence between your words and nods, not out of pity, but because he's been there. That kind of connection doesn't happen often, and when it does, it feels like drinking water after a lifetime of sand. The reason so many men miss it is because we're told brotherhood just happens, like some lucky accident of shared interests or circumstance. But that's not how Marcus lived. His friendships weren't cheap. They were chosen, cultivated, tempered like steel. He didn't surround himself with flatterers or yes men. He aligned himself with those who challenged his instincts, kept him principled, and reminded him of the mission when the crown grew heavy. Men who dared to speak truth even to an emperor. You think that came easy? No. It came from discernment, from knowing the difference between a companion and a comrade. One will pass you the bottle, the other will pry it from your hand. One will let you rot in your illusions, the other will ruin your comfort to restore your soul. Brotherhood is not just about having someone to laugh with, it's about having someone who will grab you by the collar when you're spiraling and say, "This isn't who you are." That kind of brotherhood, it asks something first. It asks you to become that kind of man. The man who doesn't gossip, who doesn't compete in silence, who doesn't disappear the moment things get messy. The man who checks in even when there's nothing to gain. The one who can sit in another man's grief without offering cheap advice or trying to fix it. You want real brothers? Be one. And yes, that means being burned. Some men won't meet you there. Some will disappoint you. Some will misuse your trust. But that's not a reason to retreat into the fortress of isolation. It's a test, a filter. You don't build brotherhood by avoiding risk. You build it by enduring it again and again until what's left is not perfect, but proven. Like the soldiers Marcus led, standing shoulder to shoulder in the mud, backs to the wind, spears pointed toward chaos. There's no shortcut to that kind of loyalty. It's forged in shared pain, shared purpose, and the sacred act of showing up. If you're waiting for someone to initiate you into that, don't, because no one's coming. That's part of the wound, isn't it? The deep, unspoken ache of modern masculinity. No rites of passage, no wise elders, no father to sit you down and say, this is what it means to carry other men. So we stumble forward half-formed, hungry for what we can't name. And if we're not careful, we start to believe the hunger means we're weak. But it doesn't. It means you're still alive. It means your soul remembers something this world forgot, that somewhere beneath all the noise and numbness, you still long for the man next to you. Not as a competitor, not as a resource, but as a mirror, a reflection of the discipline, honor, and loyalty you're trying to live out. And when you finally encounter that, even just once, it shifts something in you, because now you know brotherhood is not a luxury. It's not optional. It's oxygen. The only question is, will you breathe it?
You breathe it by choosing. That's the part no one wants to say out loud. That brotherhood, like discipline or character, is a choice. Not once, not twice, but daily. You choose to reach out when silence feels safer. You choose to forgive when pride begs you to walk away. You choose to trust again, even when betrayal still echoes in your ribs. You choose to stand beside men, even when your impulse is to pull ahead or fall back. It's hard. Maybe the hardest thing you'll ever do as a man. Not because it demands perfection, but because it demands presence. And presence requires sacrifice. You sacrifice your time, your distractions, your comfort. You become available, not just physically, but emotionally. You listen without solving. You hold space without judgment. You become a place where other men can rest from the war. But don't romanticize it. Brotherhood is not some golden hour photo of men hugging on a mountaintop. It's messy. It's full of friction. It involves conflict, confrontation, confession. It requires you to wound each other sometimes in love, to say, you're out of line, to say, you're hiding, to say, I see more in you than you're living. Brotherhood is not gentle because life is not gentle. It is fierce, and that fierceness is what makes it sacred. Marcus Aurelius didn't write from a throne surrounded by yes-men. He wrote from tents and battlefields. He buried children. He faced treachery. He knew grief, loss, betrayal. And yet, in those pages, he still praised men who kept him grounded, who walked with him, who sharpened him. That's what made him unshakable. Not his crown, but his circle. You want to be unshakable? Look around. Who's standing with you when the applause stops? Who would bleed for you, and who have you bled for? That's the inventory you take, quietly, when life falls apart. Not how much you earned, not how much you bench, but who shows up when the silence gets loud. And if the answer is no one, you don't spiral, you build, slowly, deliberately. You start small, a call, a conversation, an honest moment that would have scared you a year ago. You keep showing up, even when it's not reciprocated, even when it's clumsy, even when the other man doesn't quite know how to receive what you're offering. Because the truth is, we're all starving. But someone has to eat first. Maybe that someone is you. Maybe you're the first in your circle to stop posturing and start practicing presence. Maybe you're the one who risks honesty, who refuses to let another man drown in silence. And maybe, just maybe, that courage will spark something in him and in another. And before you know it, you build something ancient, something strong, not flashy, not flawless, but real. And when the storm comes, and it always does, you won't stand alone this time. You'll have brothers, not just friends, not just followers. Brothers, men who have seen you and stayed, men you've seen and chosen. That is the lost art. And it's not lost because it's gone. It's buried under ego, under shame, under decades of fatherless homes and emotionally absent mentors. But it can be uncovered, reclaimed, revived. The world doesn't need more lone wolves. It needs legions. It needs men who don't just chase power, but who protect it in one another. Men who carry each other's burdens, not because they're light, but because they're theirs. Men who understand that the strength of a man is not just measured in how far he can go alone, but in how many he brings with him. So the question becomes, when your life is measured, when your name is spoken by those who knew you best, will they say you stood alone? Or will they say you stood with others? Marcus Aurelius never set out to be immortal. He set out to be useful. And in doing so, he became unforgettable, not because he dominated, but because he remembered his place in the whole, in the chain of men, in the brotherhood of souls. Maybe it's time we remember too. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.